Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to talk about the end to Whoreible Decisions. Not really. Usually I do movie reviews and reactions and stuff, but since I am a big fan of the podcast, I've been listening since 2020, I wanted to talk about what's going on with them because I have been keeping up with them consistently, and I feel like some of the videos I've seen on here haven't really gotten, I guess people just made a lot of assumptions and by now they've said what they're really doing. So I just wanted to talk about that as well as maybe like my opinions on the show and why I watch it or whatever. But if you haven't, you don't know what's going on, there's this podcast called Whoreible Decisions. They're a sex podcast. They've been around for 8 years and it's hosted by Mandy and Wheezy. And yeah, they talk about sex, personal life, other people's lives, stories. They have different segments. They aren't really a guest. I wouldn't call them like a guest-driven podcast. They have a lot of solo episodes, which most of the time the fans and myself, we like those episodes more than the guests. So they put this announcement out last week that they were kind of like ending the show, blah, blah, blah. Everybody was, at least people who really watched them, were just very upset. But they revealed this week that basically they're not ending the podcast, but all of their episodes will be on Patreon, so behind the paywall. That's it. That's what's going on. So they're still continuing, but it's just going to be only on Patreon. But they basically posted that. Everybody felt like they were ending. Everybody was blaming Mandy B. More on that at 11. That's what the news was. You can turn off the video now. And so yeah, for me personally, like I said, I've been watching them for a while, and I recently have been keeping up with them because I've had times in the past where I'm like, I don't want to watch them right now. I think one thing, like I said, the announcement said we're closing this chapter. So I didn't think that they were necessarily ending. Another thing was that with the collaboration post, Mandy had accepted it, but Wheezy hadn't. And if you have been watching recently, Wheezy she went on a break from Instagram, and so I knew that, and I'm like, that's why she didn't accept it. But some people didn't know that. But going back to the announcement, when I first saw it, the only reason why initially I thought that they were ending, because they basically were like, next week is our last episode. I think that's what threw me off, because it just felt so abrupt, and there was no, like, they didn't tell us in advance. I was like, oh, if they were ending, I would think that they would tell us in advance, and they didn't. But I started to put the pieces together, and so that was another thing that more of their fans got upset about, because if you go to their YouTube channel right now, their final chapter episode, a lot of fans are happy, but a lot of fans were very upset at them for choosing this type of rollout, just because it was so abrupt. And then that announcement, and then with their merchandise, I don't know if they're going to make new merchandise, but it was like, hey, this is the last time you can get merchandise. So there was that. It's whatever. For me, if they were ending, I kind of got a little sad because I'm just so used to watching them every Monday, but I would have adjusted. Some people were doing a little too much, but I also feel on the flip side, for some people, it really does mean a lot to them. Like, I know some people see the title and what it's about, but like they were saying, there are some people who are really like, it really made me maybe accept my sexuality, or made me a more open person, made me more open person with my partner. It saved my life. It just made me happy, and so that makes sense as well. But yeah, and so the other thing was everybody blaming Mandy. And for me, as much as Mandy gets on my nerves, and I do think that she has issues, I think both of them have issues, but Mandy, she's a bigger problem on the show. I do think it was crazy that everybody was, not that it was crazy, but I'm sure she felt uneasy, because it's like, dang, the show's not ending, we're just continuing on another platform, and everybody's saying it's my fault. Like, my fault for what, But I do think that there's one, just how she interacts with Wheezy sometimes. Wheezy is way more like the bigger person when it comes to some of their debates or their disagreements. But then I also think there is the fact that her other podcast ended with Bridget because of whatever they had going on. So some people put two and two together, like Mandy's a common denominator, but not this time. I do think I could see them ending after 10 years. One, because Mandy has talked a lot about, one, the show ruining her dating life, which I don't think that's the reason why your dating life isn't good. Like she even said on this last episode, she's a lifestyle person, which is, at least with this lifestyle, like going to sex clubs, going to play parties, like really being in that world. And I just kind of think to myself, if a man doesn't want to date you because of the amount of partners that you've been with, if he has an issue with that, he's going to have an issue with you going to sex clubs. So I'm just like, unless he's just using you, he's going to have an issue with that. So it's like you might as well find a man that is okay with your past and okay with your present and okay with the type of life that you want, instead of finding, I don't know, if you come across a man that isn't into your past, he's not going to be into your present, because it's not like you turning into a nun or you are settling down. So, and she's also kind of, it seems like there's definitely shame around her past compared to Wheezy. It doesn't feel like she has any shame, and I think that's a good thing. But I could see after 10 years, then maybe I could see Wheezy continuing it, because Wheezy's the person that's like, okay, I'm pregnant, but I'm still having sex, and this is how it is having sex. And I have a kid, and this is how it is, while being a mother, or, being married, or, teaching my kid, maybe they're like 5, 6, 7 years old, about sex education and things like that. So I could see Wheezy still continuing on. I don't know about Mandy. So, but yeah, me personally, I like the show just because it digs deeper than a surface level when it comes to that world. And I just like the world of kinks and fetishes and things like that. It's interesting to me. And I started off watching Lip Service, but I just kind of felt it was a little boring. And I felt like they were kind of like guest-centered. And I didn't like most of the guests that they had on. And so I had actually came across this show through the City Girls. Their very, very awkward episode. I just kind of was looking at Wheezy and Mandy, and while they were going through, like, hey, do you know this kink? Do you know that kink? And City Girls are just like, what the hell is going on? I'm sitting there like, I know that. And so, throughout the years, they've definitely had issues. And like I said, I've had times where I just stopped watching them because of either their interactions with each other or with their guests. But overall, I just think they're fun to watch. I kind of can live vicariously through them with all the crazy stuff that they do. I like that they're not guest-centered. I love that some of the guests that they've had on have been like gynecologists and like authors and their friends. It's not so focused on celebrities. And to be quite frank, the celebrities that they have had on have been some of the most boring episodes sometimes. So, and I also like that I like some of the ignorance. I'm not gonna lie, I like that they're knowledgeable, but they're not knowledgeable on everything. And it's funny because they had an awkward episode maybe a few years ago with a host of this podcast called Inner Ho Uprising, and I had listened to that a few episodes before I had even found Whoreible Decisions. And one of their hosts, I think it was 3 hosts at the time, I don't know if they had still have the show, but one of their hosts is non-binary, and their name is Rob, and they were on Whoreible. And it started off a little awkward because I remember watching, I was like, what the hell is going on? And it got better, but Mandy kept on saying she, and Rob wasn't disrespectful. They were just straightforward. They were like, they. They were like, it's they, them. And there was some drama after the episode or whatever. But I remember thinking back to Inner Ho Uprising, I was kind of like, they're cool. And Weezy had even said this, like, they'll say their name and then they say their pronouns and stuff. They were cool. They were very smart. But it was a little too stringent. Like, it was a little too serious sometimes. And I feel like with Whoreible, I, like, respect the fact that they sometimes don't know what they're talking about, and sometimes they just say ignorant stuff, but they also say good stuff, and I kind of like that mix because it's fun, and so yeah. But some of my favorite episodes, like the recent episode they had with Rotemi was good because he was on early on when they first started, so that was a cool moment. Sexy Red was good. She was really good. She was trying to learn all she could learn. She was like, what's that? She brought her notepad out. She was writing stuff down. Or no, her phone. I like that they They never had a trans man on, I don't think, but I do like a lot of the queer guests that they had on, that they had black trans women on. They had T.S. Madison, they had Daniela Carter and Dominique Silver. They had a film that was out. I like the two gynecologists they had on. They had separate. They had a black female doctor on who was just regular gynecology, and then a black male doctor who was cosmetic gynecology. He started off with regular, and then he went into cosmetic. Cleopatra was cool, and I'm saying the guests because I can't really pinpoint the solo episodes and what they were about necessarily. The one girl, her name is Dana, I think. She was the one that didn't have an arm, but she had like the bionic arm. She was hilarious. The BET Awards, that was great. The 30-year-old virgin, that was a good one too. I think she lost her virginity at 29. And some of the OG, triple OGs, like Anna Fox, who was hilarious. I was so shocked because I never got into Anna Fox. And it's hilarious because I was kind of like, well, I don't remember her back in the day. It's like, yeah, she's like literally 35 right now. So I'm like, so when I was in 6th grade, she was in 8th grade. So there wasn't nothing going on back then. But, you know, seeing her, she had such a great personality. She was funny, she was beautiful. And I thought that was interesting just because when I would see her, it's not that I didn't think she looked good, but I just always skimmed past her. Maybe because she's always with white guys, but I find it interesting that like when black women have control of their image, they look totally different versus like in her world, it's nothing but white men for the most part. And so it's like they don't care how you look. If you ask me, sometimes it's done by design, but she looked great in the episode. I had never really got into Havana Ginger, but her episode was cool too. I'm trying to keep it positive, but the men that Whoreible had on were most of the male guests, specifically the black male guests on Whoreible, were horrible, including the freaking corn stars. Most of them, I just couldn't get through the episodes. I don't know what it was. Who else? I know back in the day they had their moms on separately. I know Wheezy definitely I'd seen her mom. I don't know if I've seen Mandy, what necessarily her mom looks like. But yeah, so I'm glad they're continuing. I don't know if I'm going to continue to pay for the Patreon because I'm right now I'm at the $15 one. Oh, and that was another thing. They had actually really said what they were doing with the podcast on the Patreon. Their last Patreon episode, they basically said it had dropped like 5 days ago, and they were like, you know, welcome to Patreon, the only place where you'll find Whoreible Decisions. And they were kind of like, oh, that's crazy, 8 years, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, they said it right there. But apparently people don't really people watch the show, but like even with the YouTube, there's so many comments saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe you guys are going away. I'm like, did y'all watch the episode? They literally said they're not going away. Patreon, I'm at the $15 tier because I like to watch video. I don't know if I can stick at $15. I don't know because $15 is a lot to watch these girls talk about okay. So I hope all good things with them. Wish them the best of luck and everything that they do. And so it is kind of like an inspiration to me because, especially with more Wheezy's part, because she just does so much stuff. And I really like the workings behind like something like a podcast. I know some people look at podcasts like they're so stupid, but there's a lot of work that goes into really getting these things off the ground and being consistent. I love that they have like their merch and the Patreon and the live shows. And Wheezy has her own studio with Alex and things like that. So I just hope them the best. I'll be watching for a little bit. So yes, so, you know, tell me your thoughts below. If you're a fan of the show, if you watch, if you don't watch, what you thought, if you thought it was ending, if you knew it wasn't ending. What do you think about their dynamic? Because I don't think I really got into that they're kind of, I don't want to say frenemies, but they were friends back in the day, then they weren't, and the show has always been up and down, which, to be quite frank, it almost seems like the best way to have a podcast, not really mixing business with friendships, because they're friends, but they're not friends, and so that, and I also think the podcast is sticking around because they make a lot of money off of it. at least with Patreon and stuff. So but tell me your thoughts below, and if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.